Members of the House, please be seated.
Will the House come to order, Mr. Clerk?
Aloha and good morning. Today's invocation will be delivered by Representative Janae Capella. Will the members who wish to participate please rise?
You can remain seated. About 3 weeks ago, the legislature hosted Art at the Capitol, this annual event that we all know and love that showcases the wonderful works of art that are displayed in our offices. Unfortunately, I was on Hawaii Island teaching dance class that evening, and I couldn't attend the event. However, when I saw videos of ballet students dancing across the mural in the rotunda, I was moved by their grace, their artistry, and as a dance teacher myself, their technique and very pointed toes. I have been a dancer for most of my life. I've had the fortune of studying with some of the United States' most prestigious dance companies, including the San Francisco Ballet and the American Ballet Theater. As a dancer, I understand the way in which art speaks to our common humanity and stimulates our creative impulses. They allow us to explore the emotions and experiences that give us purpose and imagine a society that is much more interconnected than the one that we live in today. As we head into the final weeks of this year's legislative session, I urge every single one of us to draw inspiration from the artists in our lives, to craft creative solutions to Hawaii's complex challenges and problems. Across the islands, people are struggling to make ends meet. Our high cost of living is saddling financially vulnerable families with mounting debt, and climate change is threatening our shores. We also know that our housing crisis is continuing to price working families out of paradise. The conference committee is just around the corner. While the public often views this period as a time that is clouded in mystery and backdoor deal-making, I believe that it can be an opportunity to call upon our best selves to resolve complex problems in innovative ways that advance the common good and strengthen the public's trust. Throughout history, great artists have encouraged us to see the world from a different perspective. They implore us to paint a new vision of where we want to go as a society and who we want to become as a people. As the 2022 session comes to a close, let's discover the art in one another. In doing so, let's come together to deliver a masterpiece of hope for our island home. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Capella. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Aquino, Ms. Bellotti, Mr. Bronco, Ms. Clark, Ms. Costales, Ms. Eli, Mr. Gonadin, Mr. Gates, Ms. Har, Mr. Hashem, Mr. Hashimoto, Mr. Holt, Ms. Ichiyama, Mr. Iligan, Mr. Johansson, Ms. Capella, Ms. Kitagawa, Mr. Bertrand Kobayashi, Mr. Dale Kobayashi, Mr. Kong, Mr. Lopresti, Ms. Lowen, Ms. Luke, Ms. Martin, Mr. Matayoshi, Ms. Matsumoto, Mr. McDermott, Mr. McKelvey, Mr. Mizuno, Ms. Morikawa, Ms. Nakamura, Mr. Nakashima, Mr. Nishimoto, Mr. Ono, Ms. Okimoto, Mr. Onishi, Ms. Peruso, Mr. Quinlan, Mr. Sayama, Mr. Takayama, Mr. Takumi, Mr. Tam, Mr. Tarnas, Mr. Todd, Mr. Tokioka, Mr. Ward, Ms. Wildberger, Mr. Woodson, Mr. Yamane, Mr. Yamashita, Mr. Speaker.
Present.
Mr. Speaker, all 51 members are present.
Item 2, reading of the journal. Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, may this matter be deferred.
So ordered. Item 3, Mr. Clerk, are there any messages from the governor?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, we are in receipt of Governor's Message number 18, transmitting a report previously requested. We are in further receipt of Governor's Message Number 19, transmitting proposed changes to the fiscal year 2023 Executive Supplemental Budget. May these matters be received and filed.
So ordered. Item 4, Mr. Clerk, are there any Senate communications?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, and if you and the members will turn your attention to the addendum to today's order of the day. We are in receipt of a communication informing the House that the Senate has agreed to the amendments proposed by the House to the noted Senate bills. We are in further receipt of a communication returning House Concurrent Resolution Number 130 having been adopted in the Senate. Finally, we are in receipt of communications returning the noted House bills, all having passed third reading in the Senate.
All right, for the disagree motion, Representative Belatti.
Mr. Speaker, I move to disagree to the amendments made by the Senate to the noted House.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? If not, we'll take a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The motion is carried. Members, are there any introductions? Representative Luke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is my pleasure to introduce some of the members, hardworking members of ARP. First up, in the back row, we have Kelly E. Lopez, if you could stand, and Carol Wakayama, and Audrey Suga Nakagawa. And in the front, we have Gary Simon and Dan Gardner. Oh, and then we also have Craig Ema, who just walked in. And if the members could welcome them to the House of Representatives. And if I could request that their names be submitted into the journal.
So ordered.
Thank you very much.
Representative Hashimoto. Are there further introductions, members? Okay, if not, we are on part 1, consent calendar. Representative Morikawa for the motion to suspend the rules.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules of the House in order to consider certain Senate bills for third reading by consent calendar.
Representative Matsumoto.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
All those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The motion is carried. Representative Belatti.
Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt the standing committee reports listed on pages 1 through 20 and that the Senate bills listed on pages 1 through 21 as may be amended past third reading.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
All right, members, there will be no discussion as these are items agreed to by this body for placement on the consent calendar. For the vote, Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, on the measures before us, all majority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On page 12, STANCOM report number 1968, SB number 3229, SD2, HD2. Rep. Capella votes no. On page 18, STANCOM report number 2012, SB number 2398, SD2, HD2. Representative Capella votes no. And on page 21, SB number 3165, SD2, HD1, the following vote no. Capella and Dale Kobayashi. Thank you.
Representative Matsumoto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, all minority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On page 1, Standing Committee number 1904, SB 2798, Representative McDermott votes no. And on SCR 1935, SB 2989, Representative McDermott votes no. 1953, 3046, SB 3046, Representative Ward votes no.
All right, members, have all votes been cast? Okay, if so, said Senate bills pass third reading. Members, please remember to submit to the clerk the list of Senate bills on the consent calendar for which you will be inserting written comments in support or in opposition to these measures. This must be done by adjournment of today's floor session. All right, and we're on part 2, ordinary calendar. Representative Belatti.
Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt the standing committee reports listed on pages 22 through 26 and the accompanying Senate bills as may be amended past third reading.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
All right, members, is there any discussion on beginning on page 22, SCR 1905? 1906.
Speaker.
Representative McDermott,
Yes, Speaker, I stand in strong support,
please proceed.
and once again want to thank the majority for all their hard work. It's great to be unified in a position moving forward. Lord knows, sitting on this side or this row for many years, I've often been on the losing end of things. But I really commend the majority for what they've done here, keeping the heat on. You know, today we have one of our senators, and we're in a great opportunity. We're blessed, Mr. Speaker, because right now we have 2 senators in the majority, 2 congressmen in the majority. We have the president, all in the same team. So we should be able to get this done. So sending that message that this body wants these things closed is very important. And today, I think Senator Jack Reed from Rhode Island is actually touring the fuel tanks. He's chairman, I think, of the Senate Armed Services Committee, if I'm not mistaken. But he's an important guy. Any case, what I would encourage is more of a bipartisan approach, though. Mr. Speaker, one of the things under your leadership here is the acrimony, the hatred, the vitriol. That doesn't exist in this body. And maybe that's the Aloha spirit, but if we could transfer that, some of that to D.C., I think the world would be a better place. One last thing I'd like to add on this measure is one last thing I'd like to add on this measure is, well, first I'd like to acknowledge the hard work of my colleague to my right, who has alerted us to the potential impact on our water distribution. You see the articles in the paper all over Civil Beat, wherever, that we have a problem that we didn't cause, clearly. And he's pointed that out, and now we're saying no construction for several years, so that's got to get sorted out. But I lost my train of thought. I apologize. I had something else to say. In any case, I stand in strong support, and if I remember it, I'll pop up again. Thank you.
Okay, is there further discussion? SCR 1906. If not, 1908, 1912. Representative Tokioka,
With reservation, Speaker.
so ordered.
Thank you.
Further discussion?
With
Representative
reservations.
Nakamura,
With reservations.
so ordered. Okay, further discussion. If not, next page, 1919. 1920, 1920.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Okimoto.
will we be able to go back to SCR 1919 at the appropriate time?
Yes, on which SCR?
SCR 1919.
Okay,
SB
please
2965.
proceed.
With reservations, please.
So ordered.
Thank you.
So further discussion on 1919? If not, 1920, 1921. Representative Ward,
Thank you, Speaker. I rise with reservations,
please proceed.
and like my colleague from Ewa Beach, this is about water. It's not about Red Hill, but it's about water. And this is about the Water Commission, which is very important to the Hawaiian Homes Commission. And this bill, quoting Bill Isla, basically puts the Hawaiians, Mr. Isla, as a second-class citizen, because it says you can be a member, but you're ex officio, and you can't vote. Mr. Speaker, why are we doing this? The Hawaiian homesteaders, who are farmers or pasture land, they need water. I personally was a consultant in Ho'olehua on Molokai a number of years ago, and they said if we had more water, we could do much more economically, we could plant more, we could have more prosperity. So this bill started out giving them official status with non-voting, and then became ex officio with voting, and now they're non-voting and ex officio. This is a slap in the face, a poke in the eyes to the Hawaiian community that needs water. If any group needs water, it's the Hawaiian homesteaders. So why are we kind of going forward in 2 steps, and then we go back 7 steps and say, you know, you're not ready for a seat at the table, Hawaiians, but if you are, you're ex officio and you don't have a vote. Mr. Speaker, this is embarrassing. If anybody needs a seat at the table with a vote and being official, it's Mr. Isla. Thank you, Speaker.
All right, is there further discussion on 1921?
Mr.
Speaker,
Representative McKelvey.
thank you. Just with reservations for now and hope that the issues can be addressed in conference by the committees. Thank you.
Okay, so ordered. Representative Prusso.
With reservations.
So ordered. Further discussion? If not, 1920.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Ganadin.
on the previous measure, with reservations, noting the testimony of the Department of Land and Natural Resources.
Okay, so ordered on 1921. Further discussion? Okay, if not, 1925. Next page, 1926.
Mr. Speaker?
Representative McKelvey.
Yes, sorry about that. Just with reservations, and my only concern is that by having UDAP apply in this situation, it could dissuade these companies from offering this service within the state of Hawaii, and that's a concern of mine. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion on 1926. If not, 1932. Representative Lopresti.
With reservations.
So ordered. 1940. 1941. Next page, 1946. 1949. 1950. Representative Lopresti.
With reservations.
So ordered.
And a brief comment. My only concern with this bill is that we're creating several new positions to deal with abandoned wells in the state, which is needed, Mr. Speaker. But while the backlog exists for work to be done, these positions aren't sunsetted, so that we maybe be creating unnecessary jobs in perpetuity. And I think we need to be a little more fiscally conservative in creating positions in this way. Thank you.
Okay, is there further discussion? If not, 1954, 1957. Next page, 1958, 1960. The Representative Prusso.
On 1958, please.
Please proceed.
With reservations.
So ordered. Representative Ward.
Speaker, with reservations on 1960. Are we still on 1960?
We're on 1958.
Oh, sorry.
Any discussion?
Sorry.
Representative McKelvey.
You're very efficient today. With reservations as well, and my concern is, just for the record, that this tax credit could lead to incentivizing the burning of wood, which would exacerbate our climate situation. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion on 1958. If not, 1960. Representative Lopresti.
On 1958.
Please proceed.
Reservations.
So ordered. Okay, we're on 1960. Representative Ward.
Thank you, Speaker. This is about microbeads, which to
Some
everyone...
support or opposition?
With reservations, as
Please
I
proceed.
indicated. This is about microbeads, which are minuscule pieces of plastic which are found in what I'm told, and this bill obviously is fresh and is probably creating a lot of people to do some research. In 90% of the cosmetics, including those things that you put on your face, you put under your arms, and if 90% is there, I think there's going to be a lot of blowback if we shut down 90% of that particular industry. So with those, Mr. Speaker, I hope we delve into this a little bit deeper. It's kind of a new area. It's for the environment, obviously, but it's got to be done in either scientific ways or ways that are gradually phasing it in, rather than, hey, 90% of everything on the shelves of the cosmetic places, lungs, et cetera, you're out of here. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, reservations till further information and science proceeds. Thank you.
Representative Martin.
Thank you. I rise in strong support.
Please proceed.
I think as recently as the 1990s, we didn't use microbeads. We didn't put plastic as fillers in our cosmetics. We could certainly go back to those times and use whatever it is they used as fillers before. Again, these plastic microbeads serve no function other than fillings. Up the volume, and we could actually do better by having more product, smaller packaging, and keep the plastic out of our oceans. Thank you.
Representative Tokioka.
With reservations.
So ordered. Further discussion? If not, 1961. 1962. Representative McKelvey. 1962. Any discussion on any of these measures? Okay, if not, we'll be taking the vote. Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, on the measures before us, all majority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On page 23, Stancom Report number 1919, SB number 2065, SD2, HD2, the following vote no. Gates, Har, Dale Kobayashi, Kong, McKelvey, Todd. On page 24, Stancom Report number 1941, SB number 2816, SD2, HD1, the following vote no. Capella, Martin, McKelvey, Peruso, Tam. On page 25, Stancom Report number 1946, SB number 2766, SD1, HD1, the following vote no. Capella, Dale Kobayashi, Peruso. Stancom Report number 1957, SB number 2478, SD2, HD2, Dale Kobayashi votes no. On page 26, Stancom Report number 1958, SB number 2511, SD2, HD2, the following vote no. Capella, Dale Kobayashi. Stancom Report number 1960, SB number 2290, SD1, HD1, the following vote no. Har, Kong. Stancom Report number 1961, SB number 2510, SD2, HD1, Capella votes no. Thank you.
Representative Matsumoto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, all minority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On page 22, SCR 1912, SB 3172, SD1, HD2, Representative Okimoto votes no. On page 23, SCR 1921, SB 872, SD1, HD1, Representative Ward votes no. On page 26, SCR 1960, SB 2290, SD1, HD1, Representatives McDermott and Okimoto vote no. SCR 1961, SB 2510, SD2, HD1, Representative McDermott votes no.
All right, Representative Ward, are you casting a no vote or reservations on SCR 1921? Your remarks were with reservations.
Speaker, as 1921 was with reservations in my speech, so it should be recorded as such.
With the reservation,
Yes,
so ordered.
Sorry about the correction.
All right, members, have all votes been cast? If so, said measures pass third reading. Representative Bellotti.
Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt the standing committee reports listed on pages 27 through 31 and that the accompanying Senate bills as may be amended pass third reading.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
All right, members, is there any discussion beginning on page 27, SCR 1965, 1969? Representative Matsumoto.
With reservations.
So ordered. 1974, 1975. Next
Mr. Speaker?
Representative McKelvey.
Just with reservations.
On 1975, so ordered. Okay, next page, 1976.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Lowen.
on 1975,
Please proceed.
just reservations, and taking a second look at this, I'm just worried this is a bill that will lead to sprawl instead of focusing on more density in our urban areas or even allowing greater density potentially on rural lands and developing services alongside it. This is just looking at, more urban sprawl, which is not what we need. Thanks.
Okay, is there further discussion on 1975? If not, next page, 1976, 1977, 1980, 1981, 1982. Next page, 1991, 1995. Representative Matsuyoshi.
On 1995, with reservations, brief comment.
So ordered.
The state is an incredibly deep pocket when it comes to lawsuits. I'm really worried that making students, making the state liable for the actions of students, even if they are in this kind of commercial enterprise activity, we give them is very risky to the state. We give them no training, no sexual harassment training, no any kind of other training that state employees are required to get. There's a lot less supervision than a lot of state employees have in their jobs and duties, and there's also just a lot less accountability for these students in these positions, unlike a state employee who has their job and maybe pension at stake. So because of that, I'm with reservations. Thank you.
Representative Woodson.
Thank you, Speaker. In support?
Please proceed.
Strong support. Thank you, Speaker. I appreciate the Vice Chair's comments with regards to the potential extension of liability to the state. That is true, but it is for the benefit of our kids. It's for the benefit of our students. This proposal seeks to establish legal mechanisms needed to make sure that these particular commercialization programs are successful. And we know that we've seen that these programs increase entrepreneurship ability for our kids. We know that the type of learning that is happening is interdisciplinary, defined as we have English, math, science, art all happening at the same time. And the research shows us that per this type of learning, that students are engaging and retaining the information at a much higher rate. And so what this means in real life application is, let's just say that you have a robust farm to school program at one of our local high schools. They put together a business plan. They define as the students. The students then present this business plan to a local grocery store. The local grocery store accepts, and students are now selling product in this local grocery store. Someone gets sick, this bill would afford those students additional protections. So we are providing our kids with protection so they can receive this higher level of learning. Secondly, it has a dualistic purpose, Speaker, and that is a lot of these businesses want assurances that if they work or they partner up with our schools, again, we want to encourage that from happening. They want to make sure that they are not liable of any potential lawsuit. So this shifts that responsibility, that legal responsibility, to the state. And so if we say that our kids are our future, let's add this provision so that they can have this additional protection for our kids. And so for that reason and others, I stand in strong support. Thank you.
Representative Gannon.
In support, may I have the Chair of Education's words entered into the journals if they were my own?
So ordered. Representative LaPresti.
Thank you, with reservations.
So ordered.
I certainly applaud the intent of the measure. I just am skeptical and share the representative from Kaneohe's concerns, and I would like the words of that representative entered in the journals if they're my own.
So ordered. Representative McKelvey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With reservations as well.
Please proceed.
And would like the words of the Vice Chair of Judiciary and the representative from Eva Beach entered in the record as if they were my own.
So ordered. Representative Capella.
In strong support, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed.
Thank you, and I would like the words of the Chair of Education to be entered into the journal as my own.
Okay, so ordered. Is there further discussion? Representative Har.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please note my reservations, and may I please adopt the words of the Vice Chair of Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs, as well as the Speaker from Eva Beach. Thank you.
So ordered. Further discussion? If not, 2001, 2002. Okay, next page, 20.
Mr. Speaker?
Representative Fruso.
On 2002,
Please proceed.
just with reservations with respect to those exemptions.
Okay,
Thank you.
so ordered. Further discussion on 2002. Representative McKelvey.
When we get a chance, could we go back to 1991?
Okay, 1991. Representative McKelvey.
Thank you. Just in strong support and permission to enter comments into the journal.
So ordered.
Thank you so much, sir.
Further discussion on 1991. If not, 2002. Okay, if not, next page, 2014. Members, we have a floor amendment on 2014. Mr. Clerk, have copies of the floor amendment been distributed to the members?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, copies of floor amendment number 1 have been distributed.
And we'll note that Representative Ward is offering this floor amendment. By agreement of the parties, we'll limit debate on the floor amendment to 3 speeches, 1 in support, 2nd in opposition, and the 3rd for rebuttal. So Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Ward for the motion to adopt.
I move for the adoption of the floor amendment.
Representative McDermott.
Second the motion.
Okay, is there any discussion? Representative Ward.
Thank you, Speaker. I know the parameters make this a short debate, but this one probably deserves debate for the third power because it's been debated for 44 years. Mr. Speaker, the history of this bill, which is being amended, is because of the confusion of what all means. If you remember, President Clinton said, what depends on what is, and this is what depends on what all is, and here's the issue. In 1978, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs was created. 2 years later, this body, this legislature says, hey, you guys should have 20% of all the derived income from the public lands. Mr. Speaker, now we fast forward, what has taken place in the last 44 years is that basically all has been dependent upon the term defined as net. Net means, and some of you are business people, when you have your gross sales, all of the sales, then you pull out your expenses, and then you get net. So what this bill is about, and I commend that it's been a long way coming this far, and I commend the finance chair for actually bringing it back to being all rather than net. But Mr. Speaker, all is still confusing. So the floor amendment is so simple, so much about one word, all, and it says, as this is the only way the floor amendment makes any meaning or purpose, is that for purposes of this section, all funds derived from the public trust shall mean the same as total gross receipts. Total gross receipts means all gross receipts, no expenses subtracted, no administrative fees subtracted, no net. Mr. Speaker, the point is, this has been a long battle since the formation of OHA, and I think it's time that we pay up, if you will, and I'm not going to talk about DHHL, and we've never paid for the housing for the Hawaiians, but it's time that we do justice with the Hawaiian community. Some of you will remember that in the 70s and the 80s, we had a Hawaiian Renaissance. Presently, Mr. Speaker, there's a Hawaiian Renaissance 2.0, and it's political. There's a rising up, and I would ask all my colleagues to vote for this, to give credibility to the new Hawaiian community that's rising up, but demanding that, hey, this is the law, you guys haven't done it, now let's do it. So let's make all clear that it means gross and not net. It's that simple, and I look forward to the debate that follows with this amendment. Thank you, Speaker.
Representative Luke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, in strong opposition.
Please proceed.
This bill, Senate Bill 2021, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 3, with the concurrence of the Judiciary Committee and Judiciary Chair, we have worked very closely with Office of Hawaiian Affairs to put in what's in House Draft 3. I have spoken to the Executive Director of Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and she relayed to me that the introducer of the floor amendment has not consulted with OHA. My recommendation is when we're dealing with Office of Hawaiian Affairs and the affairs of Hawaiian Affairs, we consult with the people who are directly impacted. The language in the bill already corrects what the floor amendment addresses. The devastating part about this floor amendment is this. It specifically eliminates as defined in section 10.2. What that means is the expenditure of money, when it's expended by the office, it eliminates the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. So now it creates confusion of who will receive this money and who will expend this money. It could be any office at this point if we don't make it specific that Office of Hawaiian Affairs is the one who should be receiving this money. That is why it's even more important to consult with Office of Hawaiian Affairs to make sure that language that is being adjusted does not severely hurt Office of Hawaiian Affairs and dismantle this thing. So thank you very much. So I encourage every member to vote no.
Representative Ward.
Thank you, Speaker. We know the argument of apples and oranges. I think that's what we've just heard. We heard about apples and oranges. The fact is, OHA, whether you're Hawaiian in OHA or outside of OHA, wants 20% of the public lands. This bill does not say that. Gross proceeds is what the issue is all about. And if there was a 44-year track record of genuine intent to fulfill it, we wouldn't be here today, Mr. Speaker. So what we've heard is obfuscation and ways of delaying, kicking the can down the road, saying, well, look, Hawaiians, you're not ready for the gross proceeds. And look, it'll get voted down, but remember, this is going to go down in the history of the Hawaiian community that we had a chance to say genuinely in this bill that they deserve 20% and not an obfuscation and not a way of saying, well, we really didn't do this. Ward, you didn't talk to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. I've talked to the Hawaiians for years and years and years, and they had not been given the 20%. That's what this bill is all about, and that's why defining it as all is what the amendment will make very clear. It means gross and not net. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I wish everybody to vote for the Hawaiian community by saying yes and not no on this amendment. Thank you.
All right, so that speech was still in support of the floor amendment. We will be taking a voice vote, members. All those in favor of the floor amendment, say aye. All opposed, say no. The floor amendment fails. We're back on the main motion. Any discussion on SCR 2014? Representative Holt.
Thank you, Speaker. In support?
Please proceed.
So it is definitely up to the legislature to define what is owed to Hawaiians. You know, as in 2001, the Hawaii Supreme Court ruled in Office of Hawaiian Affairs versus the State of Hawaii, OHA 1, that Act 304 was effectively repealed by its own terms so that it once again was necessary for the legislature to clarify the Office of Hawaiian Affairs' constitutional pro rata share and a statutory allocation of the 20% of all funds to be managed and administered by the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. In its decision, the Hawaii Supreme Court affirmed Yamasaki, observing, quote, the state's obligation to Native Hawaiians is firmly established in our Constitution. How the state satisfies that constitutional obligation requires policy decisions that are primarily within the authority and expertise of the legislative branch. As such, it is incumbent upon the legislature to enact legislation that gives effect to the right of the Native Hawaiians to benefit from ceded land trust. See Hawaii Constitution, Article 16, Section 7. We trust that the legislature will re-examine the state's constitutional obligation to Native Hawaiians and the purpose of HRS Section 10-13.5 and enact legislation that most effectively and responsibly meets those obligations. So again, in 2006, Office of Hawaiian Affairs versus the State of Hawaii, OHA 2, Supreme Court was consistent in its ruling in OHA 1, quote, it is incumbent upon the legislature to enact legislation that gives effect to the right of the Native Hawaiians benefit from the ceded lands trust. So subsequently, the legislature enacted Act 178, Session Laws of 2006, which took effect on June 7, 2006, and specifically acknowledged that, quote, the state's obligation to Native Hawaiians is firmly established in the state constitution. So that's the year that $15.1 million was set for the interim amount that was paid to OHA, 2006. So I'm glad that we're here in 2022 finally updating the amount to OHA, but we still have a long way to go. $21.5 million, while a great step forward. Thank you to the Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs Chair as well as the Finance Chair for moving this bill forward. But by the DLNR's last accounting, the ceded land revenues are $205 million, and 20% of that is $41.75 million. Why is this important? I think we all got this testimony from a student named Hema Watson. He's submitted the letter on behalf of Kaleo Onaopio, in a collaboration of individuals and organizations dedicated to Native Hawaiian youth civic engagement. I'll just read the end part. If we had been granted this money before, I believe my people would not be stuck where they are right now, as deep as they are right now. Why do our programs lack funding? Why do we have a shortage of educated Hawaiians? Why do we ask and not receive? It sickens me to know how severely starved we are as a community and how vehemently we have been denied growth and proper healing. So I agree with him, and I urge you to support Senate Bill 2021 SD1 HD3 so that we as Kanaka Maoli can begin to build up ourselves, rise as a collective, and become a more Pono Hawaii. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, is there further discussion? Representative Luke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and strong support.
Please proceed.
Senate Bill 2021, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 2, now statutorily sets the allocation from the gross revenues from 15.1 to 21.5. Let me just make it clear that even the 15.1 has been an interim measure, and I wanted to make it clear that on page 8, when we say the monies transferred pursuant to this subsection shall constitute the annual pro rata share, but I wanted to put in the legislative intent that the intent is to make this interim pro rata share as the working group continue to figure out and work together on what is owed to Office of Hawaiian Affairs, not just in back pay, but in their future as well. Thank you very much.
Representative Todd.
Thank you. In support.
Please proceed.
This has been something that a lot of people have been working on for a number of years, kind of dating back to definitely before I was in the legislature. And I think this is definitely a big step in the right direction, and I'm really encouraged by a lot of the language that was kind of reinserted or inserted for the first time at the Finance Committee. And so I'd like to thank the Finance Chair and also the Hawaiian Caucus Chair for kind of advancing this issue. I think one of the big concerns that arose during testimony was that the departments kind of do whatever they want. They define proceeds however they want. They define what they feel like they should pay. Some departments pay $0. Some pay 20% of what they feel they owe. So none of it really makes any sense. So I'm hopeful that the working group will find more clear definitions and that this figure is indeed something that is temporary and hopefully much more temporary than the original 15 was and proved to be. So I think just in general, this is something we can feel good about as it goes forward, provided that that working group actually holds these departments accountable. I think it was pretty disturbing, in fact, hearing the testimony from DLNR specifically. In what they feel like they owe or what they feel they're obligated to give. And I think just in general, we can all agree that there's way too much open for interpretation. So I'm hopeful that that will not be the case going forward. Thank you.
Representative Ward.
Thank you, Speaker. In support.
Please proceed.
Half a loaf is better than a full loaf. If you can't get a full loaf, you get a half a loaf. So this bill is good, but, and I know I don't feel comfortable, some people don't feel comfortable doing math in public. But as DLNR has set out that the revenues in the total proceeds from the public lands is $400 million. 20% of $400 million, do the math, is $41 million, $40 million. This bill says, hey, we're going to bump you up from 15 to 21 to maybe 31, but it still doesn't go to the 20%, Mr. Speaker. So we're talking out two sides of our mouth. We're saying we're going to give you 20%, it's in the bill, but actually when it comes over to giving the cash, it doesn't add up. So, Mr. Speaker, do the math. It's very simple. We need to say gross and gross only, not the net and all of these other sort of creeping up to being what we otherwise should have fulfilled 44 years ago. Thank you.
Representative Burt Kobayashi.
Mr. Speaker, in support.
Please proceed.
I think that the working group portion of this bill is very, very important. The bigger picture is this. Public land trust monies should go to support 5 different purposes. The betterment of Native Hawaiians is one of those 5. And the legislature has given Native Hawaiians special access to this public land trust money. But remember, there are 4 other purposes that public lands should benefit, and these are very important purposes. So let's not cut off our nose to spite our face. We want to support purpose number 1, public schools and other public education institutions, a la University of Hawaii, which gives over $500,000 per year to Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Betterment of Native Hawaiians is purpose number 2. And if my memory serves, purpose number 3 would be farms and home ownership. Again, a very important matter. Purpose number 4 would be public infrastructure, which includes everybody, including public infrastructure that helps Native Hawaiians. And purpose number 5 is even broader, lands for public use, which includes everybody, including Native Hawaiians. So let's be careful that we also remember that there are 4 purposes for public land trusts, and we need to support them all. Thank you.
Representative Holt.
Thank you, Speaker. Still in support.
Please proceed.
The second purpose was the only one that a body was created, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, to house the 20% of funding. Education gets a way more than 20% of that funding. You know, and as the representative from Hilo mentioned, some of the departments said, if we have to give OHA their money, then what are we going to do? Well, they can ask for money in other ways. OHA only has this funding method, you know, and it's constitutional. You know, the SLDF, you know, we don't even know what they do with their money. We've been, you know, audits came back that they do whatever they want. So, you know, we need to follow our constitutional mandate, give them the 20%, and let them deal with it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, is there further discussion, members? Representative Ward.
Speaker, I just want to request that the chair of the Hawaiian caucus be entered into the journal as my own, his first and his second speech, if I may.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Representative Har.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In strong support.
Please
and may I
proceed.
please adopt the words of the Vice Chair of Economic Development, both speeches into the journals if they were my own.
So ordered. Further discussion? Okay, if not, SCR 2015, 2017, 2018, next page 2020, Representative Pruso.
With reservations.
So ordered. Okay, 2023, Representative Wildberger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With reservations, please.
So ordered. Further discussion. Representative Pruso.
In strong opposition. Mr.
Please
Speaker, I greatly appreciate the efforts of my colleagues and their work, listening, asking questions, reading documents as part of the investigatory committee that looked into the audit of ADC. And we did develop legislation. I'm sad to say that that legislation died before getting a final hearing in its last committee on the Senate side. And I recognize that some of the reforms in a watered-down way have been included in this measure that also addresses the question of ADC. And I want to say that my opposition comes from really 2 kinds of considerations. And the first is, I think it matters who we listen to when we make policy. And all the small farmers who provided testimony oppose this measure because it transfers ADC to DBET away from the Department of Agriculture. Similarly, the Farm Bureau, which represents the larger farmers, also oppose that component of this measure. So I think listening to farmers, this doesn't make sense because the work that ADC does is primarily around land management, and DBET does not have any experience in this area. And secondly, I am also concerned that the focus of oversight shifts. So for ADC, so any bills in the future moving forward won't come to the Agriculture Committee, and we, I think the agricultural community expects to have those conversations with us. We're developing a certain level of knowledge about license agreements and land management and healthy soil practices, and I think ADC really needs to be part of those conversations. So for those reasons, I oppose this measure.
Representative Bellotti,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In support.
please proceed.
Thank you. I want to thank the chair of the Agriculture Committee for working on this measure. Mr. Speaker, according to the Audit Investigative Committee report, quote, the committee made findings and recommendations related to updating ADC's authorizing statute, strategic planning efforts by ADC, greater oversight of ADC's executive director by the ADC board, strengthening ADC's policies and procedures, and improving ADC's financial and accounting practices, close quote. Senate Bill 2473, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 2 remains a work in progress, but already delivers on all of these recommendations listed in the report. I look forward to this bill moving forward as this legislature continues to advance initiatives, not just on the Agribusiness Development Corporation, but on all other agricultural initiatives as we look to improve and increase local food production and local food consumption. Goals that this body has already determined since last session are very important strategic goals for our state. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative LaPresti.
Reservations.
So ordered. Further discussion? Okay, if not, 2024. Representative Wildberger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In opposition, please.
Please proceed.
I think while I'm a huge animal advocate, I feel like we're not doing enough as the state to tackle the challenges that feral animals are having on our INA. Whether you're talking about ungulates that are decimating agriculture or creating damaging runoff on our reefs, or nuisance by feral chickens, or disease spreading feral felines. We think we've got to get serious about this. And while trap, neuter, release is very popular with people whose, in my opinion, misguided efforts to feed animals but not provide for their health care is simply creating and perpetuating spreading disease and suffering of animals on our lands. So in strong opposition, and I hope that next year we can do a little bit more to address these challenges. Thank you.
All right, is there further discussion? Representative Nakamura.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand in opposition to the bill and ask that the words of the representative from Kihei be entered into the journal as my own. I also have a few comments.
So ordered.
There are two national wildlife refuges in District 14, the Kilauea Point Wildlife Refuge and the Hanalei Wildlife Refuge. Both are sanctuaries for endangered birds and plants. Over a 3-year period, the Hanalei National Wildlife Refuge attributed the deaths of 252 endangered water birds, the Hawaiian common gallinule, Hawaiian coot, Hawaiian stilt, kalua duck, and Pacific golden plover, to feral cats. Nesting seabirds are also at risk. Feral cats are suspected in the deaths of 22 Laysan albatross chicks during a 3-year period in 2015. And recently, a feral cat was caught on camera killing and dragging an endangered Hawaiian petrel out of the nest by the Kauai Endangered Seabird Recovery Project. This is a regular occurrence. Mr. Speaker, according to the DLNR, cats are the only known reproductive hosts of toxoplasmosis parasite. Toxoplasmosis reproduces in the feline digestive system, and the single cat can excrete 145 billion eggs per year in its feces. Once released into the environment, these eggs can infect other animals, including humans, both on land and in the ocean. Toxoplasmosis parasites create cysts in the muscle and organ tissues and can cause inflammation in the human heart, liver, and brain. And to date, there have been 15 endangered Hawaiian monk seal deaths that are attributed to toxoplasmosis infection. In humans, toxoplasmosis can impact the human system and has been known to be primarily impact pregnant women and unborn children. During pregnancy, this infection can result in severe damage to the unborn child, could cause miscarriage, stillbirth, and substantial birth defects. SB 2836, Mr. Speaker, does not make exceptions for culturally sensitive areas such as salt ponds and Hanapepe. It does not take into account sensitive seabird habitat, nesting areas, and does not avoid areas where our monk seals hang out. Our federal, state, and county governments are doing everything they can to save our native birds. The County of Kauai has installed shielded lights at county parks and pays the state government $10,000 for every downed shearwater. For over 4 years, night football games, high school football games, were canceled to protect our birds from light disorientation during fledgling season. Our Kauai Island Utility Company, cruise ships, and resort properties have habitat conservation plans and measures to reduce endangered bird takes on Kauai. Passage of SB 2837 will undo many of the efforts to address endangered birds on Kauai and throughout the state. Mr. Speaker, we all acknowledge the need to control feral cat colonies. Because this is a polarizing issue, we must bring stakeholders together and have the needed conversation on how to reduce feral cat populations. I believe the common ground is that cat abandonment has to stop because it perpetuates this vicious cycle. This is a difficult conversation that will require professional facilitation to make happen. Mr. Speaker, the assertion that colonies will phase out over time with a trap, neuter release policy has not been proven in Hawaii. So a pilot program is needed before we adopt this policy statewide. And such a pilot program would fund the trap, neuter release of feral cats in specific areas, require the consent of landowners for a feral cat colony, require feeders to register cat colonies and make quarterly reports. And
Mr. Speaker, may I yield my time?
Thank you. And monitor the phasing out of colonies over time. Mr. Speaker, this bill is premature and will have dire consequences for Hawaii's native bird and aquatic species, expose the state to liability under the Endangered Species Act, and negatively impact human health. Thank you.
Representative Presti.
Thank you. In opposition.
Repeat that, please.
I would like the words of the previous two speakers entered into the journal as if they're my own.
So ordered.
And I'd simply like to add that what this bill is proposing to do, Mr. Speaker, is to create a policy, a state policy, of releasing an invasive species back onto the Aina. That's at the heart of what this is. It's endorsing state policy, creating state policy to release an invasive species back into the environment. This body can no longer reasonably claim to both support endangered species and enable the sustainability and growth of cat colonies, which TNR does. TNR is scientifically proven not to work except in exceptional circumstances, and we need to take a few steps back and re-examine this issue. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Holt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I have the words of the previous speaker inserted into the journals if they're my own?
So ordered. Is in opposition?
Oh, in opposition. Yes, thank you.
Okay, please proceed.
And I'd also just like to quickly note that I think it's unfeasible for us to task our already strapped Department of Land and Natural Resources to do a statewide cat count. Thank you.
Representative Todd.
Thank you. In opposition?
Please proceed.
A wise man once said that a half a loaf is better than a full loaf if you can't get a full loaf. This bill is a half a loaf, and in this case, I disagree. We'd be better off passing nothing. It sets a very dangerous state policy. I did a quick Google on how many cats are in Hawaii, and the number is way more than I expected. The best estimates right now are roughly 2 million feral cats. That is a lot. I'm a cat guy. I have 2 cats. I have 3 feral cats that live at my house, and we feed. They live outside of my ramp. We got them spayed and neutered. They scratched my wife to crazy, to bits, and that's kind of what it takes to make this happen. There's no way you're going to spay and neuter your way out of 2 million cats as the feral cat problem. It's not physically or fiscally possible. This is a half loaf at best, and probably not even that, probably a quarter loaf. Thank you.
Representative Burt Kobayashi.
Mr. Speaker, with reservations.
Please proceed.
In committee, I voted no. But in the long run, I'd like to see feral cats reduced by any means possible. I would think that given the restrictions of the title, we can only concentrate on one methodology for reducing feral cats. But I think it's obvious that different areas could benefit from different methodologies of reducing the cat population. In this case, I will settle for even a quarter of a loaf. Thank you.
Okay, is there further discussion? Representative Morikawa. Representative Matsuyoshi.
Reservations.
So ordered. Representative Morikawa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sorry. I just want to express my reservations on this measure, and I know that the representative from District 14 has done extensive studies on this, and the Kauai County Council at the time that we were trying to address it. And it is definitely something that we need to put high on our list of priorities. Thank you.
Representative Pruso.
With reservations.
So ordered. Yes, Representative Sayama.
Mr. Speaker, with reservations,
So ordered.
brief comments.
Please proceed.
I'm not convinced that spay and neuter is the best policy to address this incredibly vast problem, as the representative from Hilo mentioned. However, I don't mind if taxpayers who want to pursue this policy give in to this special fund rather than the state having to necessarily fund it every year through GIA grants. So if people want to pay for this policy, they're feel free to do so, but I certainly won't be checking off that box in my tax forms. I strongly look forward to further discussions on different alternatives we could address this pressing problem for our environment and for our communities. Thank you.
Okay, is there further discussion? Representative Lopresti.
Still in opposition.
Please proceed.
I just would be remiss if I didn't mention, as some of my former colleagues had, is that I love cats too. I grew up with cats. When I was a child, I think I had 4 or 5 cats from the time I was a kid till I went to high school. So, this isn't a cat-hating vote. And for the record, I'd like to put their names in the record. It was Six Toes, Magic, Tiger, and Goldie. I love those cats, but
So
we need
ordered.
to do something.
So ordered. Is further discussion? Representative Tokioka.
Reservations.
So ordered. Further discussion, members? All right, so just members, please note that this bill may not yet be perfect, but it will go to conference. Is there any discussion on SCR 2027? Representative Nakamura.
In support.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to thank and recognize the Chair of Department of Labor and Tourism and the Chair of the Finance Committee to put this bill forward. I'd also like to recognize the Association for Retarded Citizens for their tireless advocacy, their leadership, and I think we will all, Mr. Speaker, benefit from, I think, all working people. For their retirement in future years. Thank you.
Representative Luke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and strong support.
Please proceed.
First off, let me just thank the organization ARP for their continued efforts on this bill. It's been a long journey, and thanks to their participation in the working group to come out with what advocacy and his work on this bill. This bill, initially, I think some of the states have opt-out provision, I think, for the recognition by AARP to understand some of the concerns for our opt-out program has pivoted very quickly and worked tirelessly to put together the first in the nation opt-in program. The opt-in program here, what we see is an incentive program to allow for members of the public who are not currently in any type of employment-related system to be part of this group to help save for their future. The opt-in program in this bill provides $25 million, which is $500 for the first 50,000 people who will participate in this program. Even with an opt-out program, the estimated number that we were looking at was around 60-something thousand. So I think if this program is successful, then we would probably see equivalent measures and equivalent participation. What is interesting about this program is it reduces the administrative burden in an opt-out program. Some of the administration and what we have seen is the administration and the agency spent a significant amount of time with paperwork to try to process individuals. In this situation, we have individuals, hopefully with a lot of education and outreach by the department, will gladly join this program. The other thing is we wanted to just thank a special mahalo to Department of Labor for stepping up and wanting to take on this challenge. This is going to be a long process. We anticipate a lot of participation by both the advocacy group and the Department of Labor to make this a successful program, but once it's implemented, we have high hopes for it. So again, mahalo to ARP and your steadfast support of this program. I'll be remiss if I don't also mention the prior labor chair for his work, the current CPC chair, who has worked really diligently on this issue as well. So a lot of hard work went into this, and it's been a long time coming, but I'm just proud of this body to have worked on this together, and we look forward to continue success in a retirement savings program that benefits the entire state. Mahalo.
Representative Bellotti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In strong support,
Please proceed.
if I may have the words of the previous speaker entered into my own, and I would just like to note, this is the kind of bold action that our legislature needs to take and that we've been working on many years, as stated by the previous speaker. I think while this is being supported and advocated for by our senior members of the AARP Hawaii chapter, this is really a benefit for all young workers. And so this is about kapuna, looking out for those coming behind them. And for those reasons, I stand in very, very strong support of this measure. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Tokioka.
Thank you, Speaker. In strong support.
Please proceed.
I'd also like to thank the ARP for their strong advocacy of this bill. The reminders, I didn't need them. You had me at hello. We have on Kauai many seniors in contact with us constantly, and this is one of their priorities. So thank you for doing what you do, and this bill will do a lot of good things for the people, the seniors in the future. Mahalo.
Representative McKelvey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Also in strong support.
Please proceed.
And nothing happens in a vacuum, as you know, Mr. Speaker. And right now at the federal level, the U.S. House of Representatives, with bipartisan support, has passed a federal measure that will mirror this measure, and should the U.S. Senate adopt it as well and it be signed into a law, this measure before us will actually will accompany the federal one and create more of a savings opportunity for our senior citizens who don't belong to a retirement plan already. Thank you.
Representative Siyama.
Thank you. Strong support, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed.
I'd like to thank everyone who was involved in this measure, especially the strong advocacy from the ARP. But I'd like to also build upon the majority leader's words that this is a measure, a policy for the young workforce. And so I really urge that the young workforce look at this policy and take advantage of it. And I hope that through stronger financial literacy education that we would be able to have more participants in a retirement savings program. Thank you.
Representative Tam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, in support.
Please proceed.
As an aspiring kapuna, I definitely support this bill because it will help a lot of young people be able to fulfill the dream of retiring in their home. Thank you.
Okay, is there further discussion? Okay, if not, we'll be taking the vote. Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, on the measures before us, all majority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On page 27, STANCOM report number 1969, SB number 206, SD2HD1, Rep. Kong votes no. STANCOM report number 1975, SB number 2922, SD2HD2, the following vote no. Capella, Peruso. On page 28, STANCOM report number 1981, SB number 2583, SD2HD1, following vote no. Capella, Peruso. On page 30, STANCOM report number 2018, SB number 2623, SD2HD2, the following vote no. Eli, Capella, Dale Kobayashi, Tam. On page 31, STANCOM report number 2020, SB number 3189, SD2HD2, Capella votes no. STANCOM report number 2023, SB number 2473, SD2HD2, following vote no. Capella, Dale Kobayashi, McKelvey, Peruso. STANCOM report number 2024, SB number 2837, SD2HD2, the following vote no. Gates, Hashimoto, Holt, Capella, Lopresti, Lowen, Nakamura, Quinlan, Takumi, Tam, Todd, Wildberger, and Woodson. Thank you.
Representative Matsumoto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, all minority members vote aye, with the exception of the following. On page 27, SCR 1965, SB 2070, SD1, HD1, Representative McDermott votes no. SCR 1969, SP 206, SD2, HD1, Representatives McDermott and Okimoto vote no. On page 28, SCR 1980, SB 2898, SD2, HD2, Representative McDermott votes no. On page 29, SCR 2001, SB 2670, SD2, HD1, Representative McDermott and Ward vote no. On page 30, SCR 2015, SB 3114, SD2, HD1, Representative McDermott votes no. On page 31, SCR 2020, SB 3189, SD2, HD2, Representative McDermott votes no. SCR 2024, SB 2837, SD2, HD2, Representative Matsumoto votes no. SCR 2027, SB 3289, SD2, HD2, Representative McDermott votes no.
All right, members, have all votes been cast? Representative Prusso.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry, I'd like to amend the record on SANCOM report number 2018. I'd like to register with reservations vote.
Okay, so ordered. Reservations. Have all votes been cast? Representative Morikawa.
Recess.
Oh, we're in the middle of the vote. Okay.
Sorry.
All right, have all votes been cast, members? If so, said measures pass third reading, and could we take a brief recess?
Members of the House, please be seated.
Okay, members, we're on item 6B, Representative Bellotti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to the agreements made by the Senate to House Bill number 2. Oh, excuse me. Mr. Speaker, I move that the Senate bills listed on pages 32 and 33 pass third reading.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
All right, is there any discussion beginning on page 32, SB 2163? Representative Tokioka.
With reservations, Speaker.
So ordered. SB 2347, SB 555. Representative Matsuyoshi.
With reservations, permission to insert written comments.
So ordered. SB 775. Representative Tarnas.
With reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Nakamura.
Same request.
So ordered. Further discussion? If not, next page, SB 514. We do have a floor amendment. Representative Ward.
Mr. Speaker, I move for the adoption of the floor amendment.
Mr. Clerk, have copies of the, Representative McDermott?
Second the motion.
No, Representative Ward, could you retract your motion and offer the floor amendment?
Mr. Speaker, I have a floor amendment to offer.
Mr. Clerk, have copies of the floor amendment been distributed to the members?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, copies of floor amendment number 2 have been distributed.
Representative Ward for the motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move for the adoption of the floor amendment.
Representative McDermott for the second.
I second the motion.
Okay, is there any discussion? Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This has been a very robust discussion about things that affects the AARP, the kupuna. This one affects everybody in the state of Hawaii, Mr. Speaker. This is an amendment for what otherwise was symbolic, i.e. the governor wanted to give $100, and I understand the chair of finance says, well, let's make it $300. This amendment says, let's make it real, let's make it substantive, let's not make it symbolic, but real. And it's based upon the figures that the study done by the foundation, the Grassroots Foundation or Institute, and they said, look, there are 734,000 taxpayers, and we should be giving at least a third or $1 billion of our surplus. And Mr. Speaker, if you recall, in the beginning, the Constitution said every surplus over 2 years has to go entirely to the people. Mr. Speaker, we are being very shortchanged on what Constitution we amended. I know we've amended it, we've done other things, but this one is to say, let's make it according to what the Grassroots says and give $1,361. That's $1 billion divided by 734,673 taxpayers. This is the fair way to go, Mr. Speaker. Our people are hurting. You know, often I speak on this floor, we have the equivalent of 48% in the Alice study saying we are at the poverty level, we are one paycheck away. This would be real and substantive, not symbolic of $100 or a couple hundred, $300. It would be that which people will remember the session for the generosity of this session. It would be a real refund of $1,361. And this amendment would show we're serious. And that is for the people of Hawaii. And Mr. Speaker, the bottom line is this. This is their money, not our money. Let's give it back to the people it belongs to. Thank you, Speaker.
Okay, Representative Luke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In strong opposition.
Please proceed.
First of all, I disagree with what the representative of Hawaii Kai is insinuating as a surplus. Mr. Speaker, we are here to do our job, and we are here to balance. And one of the things, what did we say in the beginning of session, and what did we say during our budget speech? With any type of funds and surplus funds we have, The number one thing that we committed to doing this year is to help Native Hawaiians. The $600 million commitment to DHHL, and in addition to that, the budget also provides not just $600 million, it also provides significant amount for lot development. The significant thing of that, and also raising the pro rata share of Office of Hawaiian Affairs from the initial amount to what it is now, those are significant things. And I think, for the body, the preference is to take care of these needs that have been unmet for many, many years. It is our obligation to take care of these needs so that the future generation and future legislators don't have to deal with some of these things that we have a responsibility to do. The other thing that this body is committed to doing is making the EITC permanent and refundable. That comes with a price tag of $50 million. But I think there's a commitment by this body to take care of the most vulnerable population of this state. In addition to that, we're talking about affordable housing. The amount that we have invested in affordable housing for the last 10 years in putting about $300 million has generated 10,000 units. This year, because of the aggressive efforts by the housing chair, we are looking at putting aside significant amount again for affordable housing. How about for our schools? In fact, the Hawaii Kai representative just recently talked about needing AC in all those schools. Why would we jeopardize putting school supplies and AC in our schools just so that we can take care of we have a responsibility to take care of many of the needs. Reinstating adult dental. This is something that was lost in 2009, but it comes with a price tag as well. Mr. Speaker, we have a constitutional duty to take care of our vulnerable population, and we have a constitutional duty to take care of and balance the needs of the state. So as such, I strongly oppose this measure, and I think first and foremost, we need to make sure that we have money set aside for DHHL before we make any other commitments. Thank you very much.
Representative Ward.
Thank you, Speaker. One of my favorite German words, and I don't have very many.
Still in support of the
yes,
floor
still
amendment?
in support.
Please proceed.
I'm not convinced yet. The favorite German word I have is called Zeitgeist, the spirit of the moment. People's struggling to get gas in their car at $5 plus a gallon, to pay food that is inflationary to I went to Costco the other day and beef was like $37 a pound. Can you imagine if you're a struggling family, how inflation, the highest in the last 40 years, is taking toll? The spirit of the moment is people need help. Of course, though, I appreciate what you said about the Native Hawaiians is prioritized $600 million, but there's another 734,000 taxpayers out there who are really struggling. And I keep citing the fact that, we are good at feral cats. We're good at doing, we had a bill that was on the consent calendar that says, hey, if you're on the beach, you can't put many chairs. I mean, we're down in the minutia, but for the big economic issues, Mr. Speaker, we let that stuff go by. I give you the example time and again. It's a guy who's got a job. He's got 8 kids. 3 he can afford to feed. 2 are on rations, and the other 3, it's got to be total government, soup lines, subsidies, etc. We don't have an economy the size to meet the needs of our families. That's the major issue. So in the meantime, we have these bailout subsidies here and there, but now this is a substantive thing rather than symbolic, that it's $1,361. So far, $100 to $300 makes it look like virtue signaling. Hey, we gave you guys money back, pat yourself on the back. Mr. Speaker, we need some economic renaissance. And in the meantime, we need to give people a way to make it through when they can barely get their tanks filled, their table filled with food, the refrigerators, and just being able to stay above water. That's the difficult line. That's the zeitgeist. That's the spirit of the moment where instead of symbolic, this is actual. It's $1,361 that we can return to the rightful owners, and that's the 734 taxpayers in the state of Hawaii. Thank you.
All right, members, we'll be taking a voice vote on the floor amendment. All those in favor of the floor amendment say aye. All opposed say no. Floor amendment fails. We're back on the main motion. Any discussion on SB 514? Any discussion? If not, we'll be taking the vote. Representative Morikawa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, all majority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On page 32, Stancom report number 1834, SB number 2163 HD1, Rep. Dale Kobayashi votes no. Stancom report number 1840, SB number 775 SD2 HD1, Rep. Takumi votes no. Thank you.
Representative Matsumoto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, all minority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On page 32, SCR 1840, SB 775 SD2 HD1, Representative McDermott votes no.
Okay, members, have all votes been cast? If so, said measures pass third reading. Representative Bellotti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now I move to agree to the amendments made by the Senate to House Bill number 2392, House Draft 1.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Okay, members, is there any discussion on page 33, beginning with HB 2392?
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Yamane.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Standing in strong support.
Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity to thank my co-chairs.
Sorry, Representative. This was a procedural
Okay,
motion.
got excited. All right.
So the motion was to move to agree. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The motion is carried. For the motion to suspend the rules, Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules of the House in order to consider certain House bills for final reading by consent calendar.
Representative Matsumoto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I second the motion.
Okay, so all those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The motion is carried. For the motion to pass final reading, Representative Bellotti.
Mr. Speaker, I move that House Bill number 2392, House Draft 1, Senate Draft 1, and House Bill number 1339, as listed on page 33, pass final reading.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
All right, is there any discussion beginning with SHB 2392? Representative Yamane.
Thank you. You think I know by now? Okay, Mr. Speaker, standing in strong support.
Please proceed.
On HB 2392. Mr. Speaker, the state faced a huge health crisis 2 years ago, and we're continuing to address that. Mr. Speaker, the measure before you is an emergency appropriation. I would like to take this opportunity to thank my co-chairs in PDP and the finance chair working together. Mr. Speaker, we became aware of the concerns about addressing the needs of the people of Hawaii, especially our keiki and our kupuna. At that point, we worked with BNF and the Department of Health to make sure that, one, we took care of the services for the people of Hawaii that required money to be addressed and to continue the services to address this pandemic. Mr. Speaker, the measure before you has $171 million in emergency funds. I do want the members to know that the goal is to use state money for that measure now. However, we are going to be seeking FEMA reimbursement for its totality, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I do have a brief statement from our Director of Health. The Department of Health is grateful to Speaker Saiki, Chairs Ichiyama, Yamane, and Luke for the collaboration and assistance in introducing and shepherding Representative Yamane's HB 2392 through the legislative process. This bill will enable the Department of Health to recoup funds expended for COVID-19 actions that resulted in Hawaii, keiki, and kupuna experiencing the lowest case rate and the second lowest mortality rate in the United States. Respectfully, Dr. Elizabeth Char. So, Mr. Speaker, thank you for the leadership, getting this measure forward, as well as the collaboration with this administration. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, is there further discussion? Okay, if not, HB 1339. Any discussion? Representative Bellotti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In support with just brief comments.
Please proceed.
House Bill 1339 follows through on Article 3, Section 19 of the Hawaii. The provisions of this paragraph, the legislature provide for the procedure of removal by impeachment of such officers, i.e., is a process of articles of impeachment that would have to be adopted by the Senate would then follow with, would be set to prosecute those articles of impeachment. House Bill 1339 also outlines causes for impeachment for the governor and lieutenant governor for malfeasance in office, corruption, dereliction of duty, or other high crimes or misdemeanors. God forbid we should ever have to use or utilize these impeachment statutory provisions. Important measure to have seen two impeachment proceedings in recent times. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Mizuno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. WR, please.
So
And
ordered.
permission, thank you. Permission to enter comments into the journal.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Representative Tokioka,
Yes, Speaker, in opposition.
please proceed.
This bill, HB 1339, came back, and when you look at things, and I've been around this legislature for 16 years now, when you look at bills and an absolutely clean bill comes back in the next session, and we're talking about impeaching two people. This bill talks about other appointed people, but this current language talks about impeaching two people. And so I have some concerns. I have a lot of concerns about, other people around this building have commented to me about why do we need this bill. But if we're going to do an impeachment, then I would think that everybody in this chamber, if they're going to impeach somebody, would want it to be done by 2/3 of the body, and that language is not in here. It's in the current law, but if we're going to initiate the proceedings, I would want us to have a 2/3 vote. There's a lot of things that in this bill are just kind of odd, because it's new language, which contradicts with old language in the bill, in HRS, but it doesn't strike out the old language. And everybody, this is an absolutely clean bill. So when we vote on this bill, it's done. So for that and other reasons, Mr. Speaker, and I'd also like to ask to insert comments into the journal, additional comments, because I'm thinking this bill is going to pass, but there's some other things I want to say, but I'm not going to prolong this discussion. But in opposition, and I don't think it's necessary. Thank you.
Okay, ordered for the written comments. Is there further discussion? Representative Okimoto,
Mr. Speaker, in opposition,
please proceed.
permission to insert, to adopt the words of the representative from Lihui Kauai into the journal as if they were my own.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Representative Har,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In opposition,
please proceed.
may I please adopt the words of the representative from Lihue into the journal as if they were my own.
So ordered. Is there further discussion? If not, we'll be taking the vote. Representative Mori.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, all majority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On HB 1339, the following vote no. Kong, Har, and Tokioka. Thank you.
Representative Matsumoto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, all minority members vote aye, with the exception of the following. On HB 1339, Representative Okimoto votes no.
Okay, members, have all votes been cast? Okay, if so, said measures pass final reading. We're on item 8. Are there any?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Be permitted a late introduction. Thank you so much, members. I'm excited to have one of my constituents and friends in the gallery, hiding behind the railing there. Miss Ellie Cochran, former council member from Lahaina, visiting us today in the Capitol. Thank you. And she's accompanied by my office manager, Miss Wendy Wilson. Please stand up and be recognized by your House of Representatives.
Representative Holt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Economic Development requests a waiver of the 48-hour advance notice requirement for the purpose of conducting a public hearing with decision-making to follow for for two measures. SCR 21 SD1, requesting the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism to conduct a study on the economic impacts of domestic out-of-state students, and SCR 22, requesting the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism to conduct a study on the Made in Hawaii and Hawaii-made brands, and prepare a plan to encourage and enforce the use of those brands.
So ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The hearing will take place tomorrow, Wednesday, April 13th at 10 a.m. in Conference Room 312. Thank you.
Okay, members, are there further announcements? Representative Bellotti?
A brief recess, Mr. Speaker.
Recess subject to the call of the chair. All right, members, will the House come to order? Are there further announcements? If not, for the motion to adjourn, Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I move that this House stand adjourned until 11 o'clock a.m. Thursday.
Representative Matsumoto.
I second the motion.
All those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The motion is carried. The House stands adjourned until 11 a.m. Thursday.